Great, thank you. Thank you, Stacy. So, hello, trailblazers. Okay. So we are delighted to have you with us. We are so grateful that you have invested this time with us for these couple of days. How was the first half of your day? Did you enjoy the first half of the proceedings? Awesome. Okay, well, we've got a great lineup tonight, a great lineup tomorrow. We really think you're going to enjoy it. And just want to open up just by saying thank you. So we want to thank all of the developers, all of the admins, all the MVPs that are out there. We want to thank all of our customers, all of our partners, and of course, all of our employees. And collectively, we call that our Ohana, our extended family. And together, we have done something amazing. Together, we have built this incredible company. You heard great things about it this morning from Parker. And one of the phenomenal things about it is that the notion that this company was founded on the concept that a corporation can have a higher purpose, that we can be an agent for change in society. And we're not confused. The tech industry has a lot of work to do, and we're part of that industry. But we get up every morning and we recenter ourselves on this North Star and work every day on that drive to an age of equality. And that drive has 4 lanes in it. First, standing for equal rights. Standing for the rights of our employees, our partners, our customers, and their families wherever we're operating. And some of the iconic stands, the defining stands that we've taken as a company in places like Indiana, in places like North Carolina, in places like Georgia, in places like Texas, standing for the rights of our Ohana and standing against discriminatory regulation and legislation, and standing for equal pay. And we began a journey that was spawned by great leaders, Layla Seka, Cindy Robbins, great leaders in this company spawned this journey, and they deserve a round of applause because they were real courageous pioneers that kicked off this journey. We started in 2015. We audited the pay of every employee on the planet, looking for equity and parity based on gender. In 2016, we announced that we found a gap. We invested $3 million to make it right. We repeated the process again. We announced the results again. And on Equal Pay Day 2017, we had added about 7,000 employees to our group, or to our employee base since then, and invested another $3 million to make it right. So we could plant a flag and say that we stand for equal pay for equal work, regardless of gender identity. And equal access to education. So you've seen many of the great nonprofits that we partner with. We've got a great collaboration and partnership with the San Francisco Unified School District, with the Oakland Unified School District, and with 46 schools around the world, a program that we call Circle the Schools. We're closely partnered in giving back both of our time and our resources to invest in that door to a future. Because education is that one thing, regardless of your race, regardless of your sexual orientation, regardless of your gender identity, regardless of your religion, your nationality, or your socioeconomic beginning point, that levels that playing field and opens the doors of opportunity. So that is foundational. That education equals empowerment is the foundation for equality. And finally, standing for equal opportunity. And for us, that means a workforce, a community that represents the communities where we operate. And so that when you walk outside of Moscone West and you look on the street, that the people out there on the street look no different than the people here in this room. And then building a culture within the company, and when we operate with our partners, that's inclusive, where everyone feels seen, everyone feels valued, everyone feels heard. No one feels like they have to check some fraction of their identity at the door for fear of judgment or discrimination. And it's not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. There's real positive business impact for all of the stakeholders, from the shareholders, to building a brand that people truly love, to attracting and retaining and creating a magnetic brand for employees, that they come to the company and they feel welcome and they stay and they love it. And so a broad impact. And you heard this morning from Parker, the examples of how within the company, the great impact that diversity and inclusion have and a culture like that has on innovation as well. So I think many of you know I've been with the company just 9 months. And early in my journey, I felt like this young kind of Padawan learner, and I'm going to go to Mark, like this great Jedi master, and he's going to give me wisdom, right? He's like, use the Force, right? So I spent early time with Mark and say, what's your vision of how we're going to drive equality within Salesforce and broadly in the community and our ecosystem? And his words to me, early words, were simple: use the platform, use the platform. And so that's just the fact that we're here in this room together is a great example of that. A core part of our platform, not literally, but figuratively, is these events. And the ways that we engage and build community are through face-to-face events like this. And the idea that we have this thread of equality, built right through this event from beginning to end, from all the elements that Parker highlighted, in his early keynote this morning, where we want to make it equality inclusive from the restrooms to the pronoun badges and the content and the programming inclusive of this. So that's an important way of using the platform. A second important way, and a critical part of our platform, and hopefully you got to experience some of this in the campground today. You heard a lot about it earlier this morning in the keynote, is Trailhead. And in Trailhead, we are literally using the platform. We've built 4 great equality modules with tens of thousands of badges earned already that are available to everyone, right? A critical part of building this into the platform. Another element of the platform is using our systems of record to drive equality. And so in June for Pride, coincident with Pride, we kicked off a campaign that we call Be Proudly You. And what it does is it allows employees of Salesforce in the US on a voluntary basis to disclose, to identify, to bring their authentic self. If they want to identify their sexual orientation or their gender identity, they can do that on a confidential basis. Then on a public basis, they can also identify their pronouns. And so that you don't feel conspicuous if you're the only one who's putting your pronouns out there, and people are wondering, why is that person putting their pronouns out there? That must be a flag or something. We're encouraging everyone to put their pronouns out there. And so that everyone's clear, there's no ambiguity, and that everyone feels welcome and heard and part of the Ohana and can be their whole authentic self. Okay? Thank you. So as part of this campaign, we created a video asset that is going to tell a little bit of the story about what it feels like to bring your authentic self to work with many members, beautiful members of the Salesforce Ohana. So let's take a look at the video.
Can you tell just by looking at me?
Can you tell just by looking at me?
So can you tell by looking at me that I'm an Iraq War vet?
Would you guess that I am a pro bodybuilder?
I'm an avid college basketball fan.
I love Bruce Lee films.
I am half redneck.
I used to be a chubby kid.
Would you have guessed that I'm a swimmer?
That I'm Catholic. I did not learn how to speak English until I was in 2nd grade.
Just by looking at me, you wouldn't know that I was the first in my immediate family to graduate high school.
So would you guess that I'm undocumented and then that I got a degree from Haas Business School?
Would you assume?
What many people assume is that I'm happy, but many people don't realize that I'm scared.
I'm afraid of being misunderstood.
We're all afraid of something. We're all insecure about something.
Yeah, I wake up every day with the fear of deportation.
Lots of us are just afraid of what we don't know.
Don't assume, ask what you don't know.
You don't know about Islam? Ask me questions. It won't offend me.
And if you ask me, I'm Filipino.
I'm Apache and Comanche.
I'm very much proud of my spirituality.
I am a she.
I am a he.
I'm straight.
I'm a lesbian.
I am a husband. I am trans.
I am a 3-time cancer survivor.
I'm Mexican Chinese. I'm gay.
I am a proud Muslim.
I am an ally.
I am an ally.
Not only am I an ally, I'm a champion.
My truth does not have to be someone else's truth, but they are still true.
So we're asking you to tell us who you are.
Be seen and be recognized.
Be part of a more diverse and more inclusive culture.
Help us move forward together.
Because together, we are Salesforce.
Juntos somos Salesforce.
We are Ohana.
And Salesforce welcomes all.
Can I hug you? Okay.
So I just love that video. I love what it says about this extended family, this Ohana. One of the facets in there that's really important is the facet where people are talking about being an ally. And for us, that is an essential path on this journey of weaving together all the various groups inside of the company, into one family. The notion of being an ally for people that have a different walk of life than your own. And in the spirit of being an ally, we have an incredible, many incredible, but we have one particular incredible role model. And that's Mark Benioff. And this picture was taken January 21st. Who had a chance to participate in the Women's March? Great. So that looks like about half of the audience, so phenomenal. And this is what you saw there, and literally hundreds of thousands of people, probably collectively millions of people around the nation, but maybe in other destinations, around the world, standing up as allies for the empowerment and equal rights for women. And I had a chance to participate with my wife and my youngest son, and we're on social media, and we're looking on social media and said, wait, there's Mark. He's out there on the street in Market Street. It's pouring down rain, but still thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, they're potentially, it's like the inauguration, there's all kinds of different counts of how many people were there, but it was a lot of people streaming down the street. And there's Mark out there, being an ally, equal pay for equal work, equality for all, a great example. And so the focus of the alliances that we're working to forge inside of Salesforce are these groups, our Ohana groups. And they represent the diverse facets of this rich culture inside of this company. And many of them are represented here. They were represented last night at the equality reception that we had, led by Mary Scotton, imagined by Mary Scotton, and many are represented here in the room today. So we're also about using technology to drive equality. And you heard this morning from Parker about the Salesforce economy and the scale of it, and the notion that the Salesforce economy collectively, not just our company, but our whole ecosystem, all of our partners, and the impact it has on our customers and the geographies and the economies and employment where they are based, potentially impacting up to $389 billion and up to 1.9 million jobs by 2020. And this is all part of this fourth industrial revolution. And the idea that technology is going to fundamentally change the nature of work, and we're committed to using our platform to make a difference. And one of the key statistics that's powerful and really compelling is the notion that at any point in time, there's up to 300,000 jobs open in the Salesforce economy. And so we've got this powerful tool in Trailhead, and we're going to leverage Trailhead and that technology and broadly our platform to make a difference in empowering people to be a part of this growing Salesforce economy and create opportunities for all around the world. Now, our panel this afternoon is also focused on that intersection of technology and society and equality. So I'd like to welcome our panelists to the stage. Please, Natalie, please. Elite, Julia, please. So welcome. We are thrilled to have you, and for the audience, you're in for a real treat. So we've got a phenomenal and fascinating group of panelists, and I want to really start just by having each of you share just a little bit of your personal story and your personal equality journey, and just an introduction, in your own words. So Natalie, we'll start with you.
Sure. Hi everyone, and thank you, Salesforce, for giving us this platform. This is really, really special. A little bit about myself. My name is Natalie Egan. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Wasn't always that way. I spent the first 39 years of my life under a different identity. A man named Nathan, who, there was an entire infrastructure built around that identity. I was an entrepreneur. I was an ISV Silver partner for Salesforce. Built a company in my basement. Grew it from 3 employees to 50 employees. B2B platform, and Salesforce is very near and dear to my heart, and even more now, of course. But coming out as a transgender woman really changed my perspective of equality. So this is very much a journey for me. I really experienced bias, discrimination, and hatred for the first time last year when I came out. And I thought I understood empathy and diversity and the struggle and marginalized communities. And when the bubble popped, and I was trying to pop it for sure, the the reality of the world was, on one hand, it was an extremely liberating experience. On the other hand, it was a very challenging experience. And, coming out as a trans woman really kind of opened my eyes to the problem of inequality. And as a technologist and an entrepreneur, the bigger the problem, the better, right? So I sort of I became obsessed with this idea of solving for equality. And, I think crazy entrepreneurs are the ones that think they can do something about this. And so, it's great to be aligned with some crazy people here that, will build platforms like this to really change the world with technology. So it's great to be here.
Well, Nelly, I hope you know that Salesforce really stands with the trans community.
Oh,
And if you had an ask, for folks in the audience, what were some simple things you'd ask them to think about?
Oh gosh, I think we have to be patient on all sides, right? So a lot of times, people think of this as just my transition, but I think it's a transition for you, right? It's a transition for everyone that's around me. This is oftentimes a new concept, and everybody's transition is a transition for everyone. So I think we all need to be patient with that process and just be open to new ideas. In my opinion, I get asked a lot, why is this all happening right now? Why is trans everywhere? How did this all of a sudden happen? And my answer is pretty simple. It's the internet, right? Again, right? The internet is changing things again. And, the internet is connecting us to ourselves, the trans community. I grew up with no resources, no representation. I had no idea that this was even a possibility to be me. So I repressed it all, and the internet has changed all that. It connected us together, so I could see that I wasn't the only one, and now it's connecting us to the world. And I think this is a time of incredible change for the globe, and I would just tell people to just have an open mind about new things as we become a more global planet. I just please be patient with yourself and with the process and with those around you. So,
that's great counsel.
Thank you.
Nelly, thank you. Elite?
Hi everyone, I'm Elite. I grew up in Israel. I'm originally from Israel. Moved to San Francisco about 2 months ago. Grew up most of my career as part of the intelligence unit back in the Israeli army, working mostly on cybersecurity products. Definitely, I would say the intelligence unit, but in general speaking, probably the most excluding company in Israel. People tend to think, especially people outside of Israel, that because everyone in Israel has to go to the army, that equality is not a thing, and everyone feels like they are equal because everyone is going to the army, and we grew up as an equal society. But I think it's the other way around exactly. You're going to find in more female worlds, most of the female that goes to the army, and then more men world types, most of the men. So we keep having the same problems that technology or other companies in the US or any other place having back in the Israeli army. So I grew up as being the only woman on my team out of 300, being the only one in computer science in high school, and then the only one doing computer science out of me and 2 others out of 120. And I never thought that's a weird thing at all. This is how I grew up, and it seems like a normal thing. And then I randomly went into a meetup that speaks about gender and pay gaps and gaps in general. And I was like, whoa. Wow. I just couldn't understand how many biases that are conscious and unconscious have been experienced all my life along the way. I immediately joined this group of awesome female volunteers there, which slowly grew up in my mind this is such a huge problem, and the bigger the problem, the better it is for young startups. And that's weird that there is no solution out there that actually fix it. And I slowly it started, I know it sounds horrible, but it started as a joke when I said hey, to my 2 co-founders, let's do something about women in the workplace as a startup. And they were like, that's a pretty good idea. And we started exploring what is out there and how people are leveraging, if any, technology to solve the issue. And this is how I ended up here, I guess. And now we are part of the Salesforce incubator, and which is what makes us made the move. So thank you, Salesforce, I guess.
Of course. Israel is such a hotbed of innovation,
yeah,
and such so out of proportion to the population, size, or even the size of the economy. What's your thesis for why it is there's so much innovation happening in Israel?
So I guess most of the innovation that comes out of Israel is around cybersecurity and other type of security companies that comes out. I think we are 5 to 10 years ahead of time working on huge, complicated products in the army. And then when people leave the army, they were like, this can actually be a good corporation outside of the army. And they just start leveraging these technologies that they learned back in the more open world, I would say, and sell it as a product that they were actually developing previous that for the army. So I think the experience that we get as 18 years old kids with technologies that no one in the world is using, we're usually the beta testers for any kind of technology that comes out from any kind of company. So Microsoft and probably Salesforce and other companies that are leveraging us as a beta testers along the way, expose us to technologies that can turn into big products way before anyone else is exposed to them. So.
Oh, that's fascinating. We'll come back to Junko and learn more
Sure.
as well. So Julie, maybe tell us about your personal quality journey and some things that you're up to now.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And thank you, Salesforce, for having me here. And for the sake of the conversation today, my pronouns are she and her. So my career started in wireless technology about 20 years ago. I was working at Motorola when it was still a great leader in wireless technology. And I came in actually on the marketing side of things in the mobile phone division. And so I didn't actually I definitely knew moving into that company that I was one of a few women who worked there, but in my department, it was mostly women. So I didn't feel a lot of that inequality. I shifted, about halfway through my career, I shifted to help start a social enterprise called RED, which was about channeling private sector talent and resources to fund AIDS medicine in Africa. And what I learned through that was just how much can be done when you partner and create really sustainable and mutually beneficial public-private partnerships to achieve huge social goals. And that organization in the first 5 years raised $300 million to buy AIDS medicine in Africa. And basically, what it was doing was giving people who, simply because of where they were born, were not having a chance at life, and making sure that mothers who are HIV positive would have the medicine they needed, which is literally 30 cents a day, to have HIV negative babies, and ending generations of children who are being born HIV positive simply because their parents didn't have access to medicine. 6 years ago, I met Ashton Kutcher, and him and Demi at the time shared with me that they were starting on their journey of wanting to focus on ending child sex trafficking and the exploitation of children. And they had tapped into the tech community at the time. And they shared with me their vision of what they thought would be possible. And it seemed to me an amazing opportunity to channel everything in my prior career into this new job, which was understanding the tech industry, understanding public-private partnerships, channeling great talent and resources to transform a problem that is incredibly complicated, but that's what we've done. So I now run Thorn, which is a nonprofit dedicated to leveraging technology to combat child sexual abuse including trafficking and spread of child pornography, and then looking at new types of abuse that technology has created. Salesforce is a great partner to us in that. But just on the equality, yes, they're a great partner. On the equality journey, this job has been quite interesting because we are a nonprofit, but we've evolved in the last 5 years to be kind of like a small tech startup. We have our own engineering team, we build products, and our main customers are often law enforcement. So it is not unheard of. In most of my meetings, I walk into a room with all men all the time, whether it's a tech company, a law enforcement partner, or lately we've been in Washington, D.C., and most recently I had one of our representatives speak to me for 45 minutes about what we did, and then say to me, "So who runs this thing?" And I said, "Well, I do." And he goes, "Oh, I thought you were just a concerned mom." And so then I had to go back to the beginning. So it's, it's interesting. It pops up everywhere, but it's definitely a part of, I think, all the work that we all do.
We were talking backstage, and you talked about your aspiration, earlier in life to be a CMO of a large company, and now, that's just transitioned to being, the CEO of a growing entrepreneurial venture. Talk us through that, that journey and some of the lessons and challenges, what you've learned and what advice you'd share for other aspiring entrepreneurs and leaders out there.
Yeah, I think I grew up in a really small town. Not many people went to college. I think I didn't know what was possible. So when I went to college, I thought, I want to work for one of those big companies, and I loved marketing, and so I thought CMO of a Fortune 100 company. And when I got into my professional career, I realized what I really wanted to do was change the world. Like, I wanted what I did to matter. And I think, in Motorola, it was about connecting the world, then giving everyone the ability to communicate and have access to information. And then I realized what you could do in other enterprises and small startups and being an entrepreneur. And so I think my path has really followed where can I have the most drastic change with the time that I have on this earth and the time that I can spend. And so I've gravitated to, more recently, startups in social enterprise, and places that sit at a nexus of unexpected connections. So a lot of people say, I don't really see sexual abuse in technology. What's that intersection point? But I think those unexpected connection points are where you see the greatest change the most quickly. And so I've enjoyed having that, shifting my focus from just this thing, because I didn't really have a base of knowledge growing up of what was possible, to now just grabbing those big opportunities for change.
Yeah, I think all three of you have focused in on this unique intersection, connections, and Julie, to use your word. Natalie, maybe tell us a little bit broadly about the opportunity that you saw to advance empathy, equality, society, and then the connection that you saw with technology and how, translator, how you're going after it.
Sure. So I think for me, and this is very much part of my journey, right? So as I started to come out, I started to share my story, and it was sort of one-to-one in a lot of conversations, and I started writing a little bit and getting good feedback on that. So I started to share more and more of my story, and I eventually earned a right to get on a very big platform to tell my whole story, and it was my first time on stage and as Natalie, and I shared my everything, right? Full details, and the response was incredible. People thanked me for my story. I expected that, but what I didn't expect was people started sharing their stories with me. And from all over the world, I was getting, these messages on Facebook and people writing me these emails, and one we printed out was like 3 pages long, and it was a story of somebody telling me that I inspired them to help them change jobs, and they said, if you can do everything you're doing, I can change jobs, right? And but these people gave me this access point and this window into their worlds to understand challenges that I never understood. And they took the time to share their story with me, and because I had shared my story with them, there was this new understanding of my identity and this community, and that's when the light bulb sort of went off for me.
And just pause for a moment. So how did it feel? So this journey of when you first started sharing your story, and then you got this feedback, did it make it harder, easier? I mean, how did it actually feel?
Yeah, it was rocket fuel. I was like,
so
okay,
it was like turbocharging you.
Yeah. I mean, and I said, if I can inspire people to, get out of abusive relationships and quit, with, sort of alcohol and these things that were coming, these stories that were coming at me, I just thought, well, wow, if everybody understood everybody's story, then we would all probably get along. And I just remember very specifically when I first came out as trans, I had this very nasty altercation at a Starbucks, not with a Starbucks employee, but with someone else. And I remember thinking to myself, if that person only knew, like, what I've been through and this identity that I had built and this, I was married and I had 3 kids, and this infrastructure was built around this other identity, and it was really done because that's what people expected of me. And I thought to myself, if that person only knew my story, then they wouldn't judge me quite as harshly. And that's when the light bulb went off for me. And it's age old, right? It's so simple, but it's storytelling. And in 2017, the ability to tell story is totally different than 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And there's a portfolio of tools that you can use today to help tell stories. And so we sort of glommed onto that and said, look, if we can use technologies to help tell stories in little sort of bite-sized modules to help kind of people develop empathy over time by bringing representation onto a phone, right? So imagine in a work environment dominated by, a certain type of people, whoever that is, you need to condition that environment to start to be accepting of other, identities and cultures, and so that it's ready when you actually recruit them and bring them in, that they actually stay, right? So you kind of, and that's how we kind of came up with this idea is, we're going to use technology to tell stories in new and engaging and entertaining ways. We call it entertainment. But our goal is not only to make workplaces more equitable and empathetic and authentic, but the end user customer, the ultimate person we're trying to reach, are the people that never interact with our platform. Right? It's the child of the senior partner at a law firm or the neighbor of someone that is able to be more themselves. And when, as we accomplish this mission, like, we are saving lives. Yeah. Right? And that's where I look at technology here and get very excited.
And so tell us kind of the perfect scenario of how you would see this playing out in a workplace, just technology-wise, and the engagement with the employees and the training and development. What's a perfect scenario?
Well, I think diversity and inclusion has a very bad reputation traditionally. It was sort of a compliance-driven requirement, and it was very focused on what you shouldn't do. And we're trying to reinvent all of that to make this, a much more, instead of like one time a year that you look at a video and you're fast forwarding it and you're not paying attention, it's more of an experience that is sticking with you all the time, right? So. Basically, what we're building is an empathy workout app. So it's kind of serving you like little pieces over time. And in a perfect world, an organization with 20,000 people could deploy that with no onboarding, and people are using it, on the bus, and it's really in their office. But it's really a self-development, tool. It's not about diversity and inclusion. It's about identity, and it's about authenticity, and it's about helping people be their best version of themselves. And when that happens, it starts to allow for you to accept other people for who they are, and all boats rise. So that's my quick version of that.
Yeah, and your point, your meta point about the power of storytelling, just super resonates. And we had this moment backstage, when you started sharing some of your story, kind of a prelude to this, and just spontaneously, I just wanted to share my story with you, and it's just really, really powerful. And I think anyone who has like a shred of humanity in them, when they get a sense for someone else's story and that spark of empathy, can really be a transformational, point for them. And so I can't wait to see, the technology, spread and flourish, and what happens, over time and in the near term. Now, Elite, you're working on some facets of the same problem, and maybe tell us a little bit about the opportunity that you saw, and then how you overlay technology, or how you are overlaying, technology on that.
So when we started exploring the industry of diversity and inclusion, I kind of like started to think, what are the attributes that I want to see on our solution? And I figured out I want to see two main things. One of them would be, I don't want it to be another B2C solution. I think there's a lot of corporate responsibility and business responsibility behind figuring out how to do the next step for women, LGBTQ, people in color, basically anyone that is considered to be a minority. And the second thing is, a lot of the solutions that I saw out there were, one way or another, excluding white, straight male. And I think, like, if we could find a solution that can put them involved in a positive way and not forcing them to go into training and these kind of stuff, that would be the ultimate solution in my opinion. And I just started exploring what is interesting for diversity people. And I started talking with them, and I posted out a short request that if you're an HR or diversity person in any kind of company, I'll be happy to talk with you for like 10 minutes. I got responses for so many companies I couldn't even imagine. And I just started talking with them saying, hey, so what do you do in your day-to-day? I think 80% of them said they're writing policies and running trainings. I was like, that sounds like 2010, maybe 2000, whatever. It doesn't sound like 2016 in any way. And I figured out, you hire these people in companies and they spend all their time and all their team's time on writing policies that are probably the same policy in every company. Every company rewrite them from scratch. So that's probably a bad use of their time. And we need to figure out how we can bubble up real issues that happens in their company and help them hands-on figure it out. Coming from a cybersecurity background, the first idea I had in mind was, let's do an antivirus for biases. This was the first product I had in mind, which basically, let's run in the background for any company that we work with. If you don't have any problem, you're not going to hear from us. But if you have a problem, we're going to engage with you and suggest a solution. And this is how we came up with Junko. Junko is, I'll start with the name, actually. So Junko is named after the first woman who climbed Mount Everest. She was a Japanese lady. She passed away last year. And we took the name as like the purpose of what we want to see for the company. So Junko is an AI-based diversity and inclusion coach for companies. Basically what we do, we connect to any SaaS platform in a company. So Salesforce is obviously one of them, but the same goes for your recruiting platform and R&D platform and HR, email, Slack, whatever SaaS platform your company is using. We pull out the data from these systems, then we analyze them for patterns of conscious or unconscious behavior towards women, people of color, and LGBTQ people in your company, and then engage with executive, manager, or employees with corrective actions once we identify a pattern. So an example for this can be reaching out to a hiring manager saying, hey, it looks like it's been 10 days since you posted out this job. You only have 5% minorities that applied. And this is what you can do now in like a few seconds, maybe 2 minutes. One of the things that we can like try to focus on is these corrective actions should be a no-brainer. It should take you at most 5 minutes to do. You can do it on your day-to-day anyway. Looking into Salesforce, so we look on the patterns of how managers are allocating opportunities to salespeople within their teams and making sure they're not missing anyone in their team potential to grow. So a lot of people think that we look into stuff like, do you have enough minorities in your team? We don't care about this stuff. The minorities that you have on your team for this time frame is good enough. Let's make sure you keep maintaining them and keep them in the company and growing the right people to the right roles and not nagging people. You need to hire more diverse people. What you have now, let's make sure they stay within your company. Thank you. If you have one woman on your team or you have one Afro-American person on your team, let's make sure they get the same opportunity as any other straight white male on your team. Because when you do, thank you. Because next year, when you're going to do a talent management, look out and say, okay, who should we promote to what role? It's probably going to be this white male who used to get all the big opportunities and everyone know them, rather than this woman who never got the same opportunity. So this is kind of the patterns we are looking into.
Yeah.
And all the engagement that we do, which is, I think, probably the best thing that we do, is the engagement is really in a very non-judgmental way. So we reach out in a very coaching way, I would say, saying, hey, it looks like you're missing this person potential. None of this engagement going to say, hey, you're discriminating, because we want to believe a lot of these stuff are unconsciously happening. And one of the research, I think most of the popular ones, talks about if you force someone to do something, either go to training or hire, now we are hiring a minority. We are going to force you to hire someone, chances it's going to happen are almost zero. People are going to push back just because they were forced to do something. So we kind of like giving it as a suggestion, and we see crazy numbers of people engaging and following the suggestion just because of the language.
What are some, you're seeing some, you're getting all this body of data, are you seeing any unexpected insights now as you get to see, without sharing anything proprietary to any specific company, but what are some insights that you're gleaning?
I think the most incredible thing that we found out along the way, when I started developing the product in my head, I was like, how people are going to react to the engagement. People are going to be pushing back. What is going to happen? I think, and we're just launching a blog about it, the most fascinating thing that happened was the way people reply to this AI system. There is no one behind it. And people keep replying to it with like, thank you, that's an awesome idea. Or I think one of the most happiest moment of the company so far was someone actually writing an email to insights@junko.com, which is the email that we send out the emails from, saying, hey, Junko, so it's been 5 days and I didn't get any engagement. Is everything working? And basically, there is no one behind this.
So it's not
system.
personified in any way, but people are giving it, they're personifying it.
And the funny thing, every time that I go to a company, right before they launch it within a team or a group of people, I was like, just so you know, there is no one behind it. If you have any kind of problem, you can reach out to me or to the support email or whatever, but there is no one behind it. And I give you the examples of how people react to the system. And then they start reacting to the system, even though I already said you don't need to react because there's no one behind it. So we now recently added this auto-reply saying, my humans didn't teach me how to reply, but I'm going to forward you to support, and then I'm going to contact you if there is any need. But I think that's the most amazing thing that we see. Like, people feel they can share their thoughts or feel more comfortable because they don't, I think they don't feel like someone who come by their desk is judging them on what they do. It's like a computer finding stuff.
So when you see like these personifications of AIs, like gives them a name and a personality, Siri's an example, right? What's your reaction to things like that?
I think it makes, for me, it's weird. Like, I'm never going to speak to my phone. I would say never, because when I saw the iPad for the first time, I was like, why do we need this? And then I bought two. So I wouldn't say I would never speak to an AI. But I think it makes people feel a little bit more comfortable. It's not like you're talking to a computer, you're talking with Siri or Alexa or whatever. And this is like an actual person, because they have a name and everything. I think it's a good way, and I think it lowers the barrier for a lot of people who say, like, AI is going to take control of my job, and I'm going to be out of a job or whatever. And now they're just another person.
So take us out, in your mind, 5 years from now. And where do you see this interaction with humans and AI entities? What do you imagine that looking like 5 years from now?
It's going to be a sad answer.
Say again?
It's going to be a sad answer, actually. I think that, and there are a lot of researchers starting to come up today, is about how these AI tools and implementations getting the same biases we have implemented in them just because a person were actually developing them. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges that we have of leveraging these technologies, how we make sure we don't leverage also the biases within these technologies. So I think people may think that using AI can eliminate biases. it's probably not going to be the solution just using AI. All these AI solutions going to have the same biases we all have, just because they are based on what we see today,
Right.
which is not an equal opportunity in any case.
That's like a paradox, right? Because how does a person
Yeah.
with a bias distill and recognize a bias in an AI when they have that same bias? They're blind. They're
That's right.
blind to it. That's a great insight.
Yeah.
So Julie, you're dealing with this horrible facet of society and this really insidious problem that maybe just first of all just begin by just kind of describing the parameters of what's really going on and who's is being exploited, and just educate us a little bit.
Yeah, so the two biggest issues we work on right now are child sex trafficking in the United States. It's obviously a global problem, and the spread of child sexual abuse imagery, or legally known as child pornography. Just if we look at just the trafficking problem in the United States, a lot of people think child sex trafficking kind of happens over there, right, in another country that may not have as many resources as we do. But the reality is it does happen here at home. And the basics of trafficking are it is a child forced into prostitution. And what we're seeing in this country is that most of the children that are forced into prostitution in this country are our most vulnerable children. So depending on the county, this has never been studied nationwide, but on the county that has done studies on this, 60 to 90% of the kids who are identified in trafficking are coming out of the foster care system. The majority of these children have been sexually abused at some point in their life before they were trafficked. Every situation is different, but you see high rates of sexual abuse. The majority of these children are children of color, so high rates in the African American community, Hispanic, Native American. Again, it can affect anyone, and a lot of times you'll see big awareness campaigns that try to shock you and say, oh, it can happen in your backyard, it can happen anywhere. Well, yeah, it can, but the reality is that it doesn't. It affects our most vulnerable, those who are coming from broken homes, homeless, runaway, LGBTQ youth are at higher risk for this as well. And just how it presents itself is a lot of people think, oh, these are kids who are kidnapped and then they're held captive and then they're being forced to be sold. No. These kids are probably still going to school. They go home to their foster homes at night. They go home to their group homes at night. And someone comes along and maybe meets them at the mall. I remember my first year on this job, we interviewed 100 or 200 victims, survivors. And more than once, when I listened to the interviews, I heard the girl say, we asked, like, how did you meet your trafficker, otherwise known as a pimp? And more than once, a child said, well, or how did he convince you, right, to stay with him? And she said, well, he took me to McDonald's. No one else had ever taken me to McDonald's. It's these kids who really have nothing that are then it's kind of like Stockholm syndrome. Like someone comes along and this is the best care they've ever had. And so we're really talking about highly vulnerable parts of our community that are then preyed upon for this.
And it's hard to process.
Yeah.
Right. Even when you think about it, for anyone can relate to a child, whether you have a child or not. And it's this sort of exploitation and abuse. And so I'm just imagine it must be hard just even sometimes just to hear the stories and just to go into work and to deal with it kind of day in, day out, right?
Yeah, it is. But to tie it back to the technology side of things, I think that's actually one of the reasons why we looked at technology as part of the solution. It's one of the reasons, but the other is just the scale of this. Like we as an organization say, technology didn't create child sexual abuse, but it definitely democratized it. So 20 years ago, before there was the internet, people had to drive down the street to buy someone by the hour for sex. Today, they open their computer and they go on a fully legal website with fully legal escort pages, and everyone on there says they're 18, But a lot of those are 13 and 14-year-olds being sold by the hour for sex. And it's happening, by the way, within a 10-block radius of where we're sitting right now. And it's happening right now. And when we started talking to law enforcement, and there's all this pressure being put on them to say, you need to go find these kids, they're like, there's 150,000 escort ads posted every single day. How the heck am I supposed to figure out which one's a kid? And so through some of the research we did, we had a hypothesis that you could train algorithms to predict which ads were children through a variety of factors that we learned. And so that's what we did. And one of our tools, our first tool, is deployed nationwide and now in 2 other countries, helping law enforcement find the needle in the haystack with intelligence and machine learning. And because it's so difficult, it helps make sure that they don't have to look at all the content all the time. They can just focus on what's most important. And I think that that becomes even more important when we talk about the child abuse imagery. We're talking about angels on earth when we talk about the law enforcement who has to look at images and videos of children being abused every day and try to look for clues to find these kids. And we can talk about the scope of that problem, but it's in the hundreds of millions of images and videos that are being transmitted via the internet at any given time of pretty violent sexual abuse of children. And if you are someone who has to look at that as part of your investigation, mentally, you really only want to look at what you absolutely need to look at. And so that's where AI and machine learning is very, very important in this field.
What can the audience do?
Well, so lots of things. We are a small organization, and much of our work has come through public-private partnerships. So we have a suite of technology companies that often lend us their technology or their talent. And so I would say a couple of things. One, we're always looking for partners. So you can go to wearethorn.org and fill out our survey to tell us whether, one, your company has technology that would be relevant, or you yourself has a talent that would be relevant. And we're also hiring. So the biggest challenge for a lot of companies is engineering resources, but we have half of our team are engineers, and we build scalable products that are being used around the world every single day to stop abuse. And I have to say, like, the engineers who work for us, we have ones that have come from Amazon, from IBM, and they come in, and when they know that at the end of the day, the impact of the code that they designed is the child who's being saved and removed is incredibly impactful. So come work with us. And if you can't work full-time, you can, again, lend your talent. And if you know Salesforce really well, come lend your talent there, too, because we use Salesforce for all we do, and helping us maximize the effectiveness of that in our products and programs would be helpful, too.
Okay. So a closing question for each of you, no particular order. You've got this incredible mosaic and this rich, audience here that has all these different experiences with many different facets of the tech industry. So what's advice would you offer them based on your journey, kind of the road ahead? How can they be helpful in the cause for equality? You have this chance to make a plea. What would it be based on your life experience?
I mean, I think community is the key, right? And I think, kind of going back to what's started a lot of this and is both a challenge and an opportunity is the internet. And I think that, getting people to understand that the tribalism and the tribes that are created by the internet and the echo chambers, which can feel very comforting. It feels very comfortable to be with people that are like you or like-minded. I would suggest that people lean into the discomfort of understanding other people's perspectives. And I think one of the challenges with diversity and inclusion is that it makes people uncomfortable, and I think that's a good thing, right? Like, if you're uncomfortable and you're you're learning new things about people. You know, I would encourage everybody to lean in on that, and I think that we all need to come together. Like I see a future that's very aligned to sort of the singularity theory, where the internet is really the great equalizer, and I think there's going to be a lot of turbulence till we get there, but I think the internet's going to really help us figure out that we really are just all human beings. Like there is literally no difference.
As a non-expert on the singularity theory, just expand on that a little bit.
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of theories on singularity, but I think there's this realization that we are all one, right? And I think the internet is taking us there. And while on that journey, I think people are realizing, oh my God, there's so many different people in the world, but we have more in common than we have not in common, right? We're both human beings. 99% of us is basically identical. But there's just a few little things that are different. And I think that there's this awakening, or to be, that we're all experiencing, and I want that very much to continue, and I want everybody here to facilitate that. And I would also just ask for help. I mean, we can't do this ourselves. None of us up here can do this ourselves. And so if you could spread the good word and just let people know that there's great technologies out here that can actually scale to solve equality, like that's the big ask, So.
Thank you, Natalie.
Yeah, thank you.
I think what I could tell to everyone, and I keep trying to tell myself once in a while, is don't make assumptions, especially on yourself. I think a lot of people are going to like, yeah, I'm probably not going to get to this role, I'm probably not going to be accepted to this thing or that thing. And what I learned, I think, in the last year, but way before that, is like, worst case scenario, it's going to be awesome. And even when we applied for the Salesforce incubator, I was like, there are probably tons of other companies using AI that has much better connection to Salesforce than what we do. Like, we connect to any kind of platform, and Salesforce happened to be one of them. And my co-founder was like, can we just apply? What is the worst thing that can happen? I'm like, I need to move to San Francisco. So I think don't make assumptions on other people, but especially on yourself. I think the biggest barrier that we have, especially in our career, is us putting ourselves into, well, I'm probably not going to get it, so I wouldn't apply, or I wouldn't do it. So I think that's the best thing that I can say to everyone.
I think that's powerful. Thank you. Julie, the last word.
Well, I'd like to just really build on what I think both of you said. I think something I've learned a ton, and I constantly am, is one, try to be constantly learning, and definitely lean into the uncomfortable, whether it's the equality discussion or the issues that no one talks about. So this is an issue that no one talks about. And I think one of the reasons why this work hadn't been done before we started is because once you look, you can't look away. And so people often don't look. So I would say those places where people won't look are often the places where you can probably personally have the most dramatic impact, because they're hard. But I think in the tech community, and especially in Silicon Valley, you have so much passion and so much talent. Why not tackle? I know everyone's tackling really hard things, but maybe tackle those really hard things that people tend to look away from. You be that one person who looks towards it and is willing to step up and do it. So that would be my...
Thank you, Julie. Look, so much of today was about celebrating trailblazers. And here you have three remarkable, courageous, brilliant leaders. And would you please join me in just acknowledging, their contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, thank you all. Thank you all for what you have done. The leadership model that you're setting for all of us, and just we can't wait to see the things that you accomplish in the future. Thanks to our audience, both here in the room, we have people watching online. Thank you for your passion, just the fact that you're here and listening and paying attention, your passion for equality as well, and you're all equality trailblazers as well. So thanks to all. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.